The edge of Viridia was known as the Whispering Verge, a place where the mortal world frayed into constant silver mist and where the air tasted of ozone and regret. For Elias Vance, a young scholar obsessed with the lost languages of the ancient Ethel tribes, this mist was not a boundary, but an invitation. He carried a heavy leather-bound journal and a relentless curiosity that made him ignore the chilling whispers warning of the Fae realm beyond the veil. The Fae were not creatures of gentle legend. They were beings of sharp, terrible beauty and raw, undiluted magic strictly forbidden to mortals. Elias sought not conflict, but a specific, forgotten artifact. A stone tablet rumored to describe the true language of the Veil, the one sound that could bridge their world safely. Deep within the Fae realm of Ethel lived Lysandra, a high Fae of the moonlit court, whose beauty was a cold, shimmering testament to her power. Lysandra was not a warrior or a courtier. She was a keeper of the ancient balance, and the burden she carried was profound. Her tears the manifestation of her deepest emotions. Whether sorrow or joy were potent, unstable shards of pure creation magic, deadly to any mortal who touched them. It was this cursed, terrible magic that kept her isolated, ensuring she never felt deeply enough to shatter the barrier between their realms. But destiny, they say, laughs at boundaries. And the moment Elias pushed past the final curtain of mist, the veil itself chimed with a sound only Lysandra could hear. Elias had ventured too far. The Fae lands were beautiful, but treacherous, a garden of thorns and light-devouring shadows designed to ensnare. He found the tablet he sought half buried in the roots of a colossal silverwood tree, but in doing so, he tripped a centuries-old Fae ward. A vine, woven from pure shadow and energized by ancient law, snapped around his ankle, its sharp filaments instantly drawing mortal blood. The pain was searing, but worse was the chill of the shadow vine, designed to slowly steal the warmth and life from any trespasser. Lysandra materialized on a nearby branch, her silver-white hair flowing like water in the still air, her eyes the color of a winter sky at dusk. She had been drawn by the desperate chime of the veil, and the sight of the vulnerable, bleeding mortal scholar filled her with a terrifying, forbidden rush of feeling. He was not a threat. He was a fool, a desperate human with eyes that mirrored the relentless hunger of discovery. Fae law was absolute. Leave the trespasser to the woods. Let the veil correct the imbalance. But Lysandra's keeper duty warred with an immediate searing instinct, a connection that felt as deep and old as Ethel itself. This was the fated encounter whispered in the ancient songs, a meeting that should never have occurred, sparking a flame that could consume two worlds. Ignoring the terrifying consequence, Lysandra dropped from the branch, her feet barely disturbing the moss below, and knelt beside the wounded Elias. Elias looked up, his vision blurred by pain, seeing only a figure of impossible grace and light, his last thought being that he had finally found his death in beauty. "Silence, mortal," she commanded, her voice a low, melodic chime that somehow calmed the frantic pounding of his heart.
Ow.
She knew the shadow vine could not be cut. It had to be undone with life force, a magic Lysandra had been strictly forbidden to expend on outsiders. The shadow vine was draining him rapidly, and a primal, irrational terror for this stranger's life seized Lysandra's core. Her control fractured. A single, crystalline tear detached from her silver lash and fell, not onto the cold earth, but directly onto the shadow vine, gripping Elias's ankle. A single, Fae tear. It was meant to vaporize the mortal flesh it touched, consuming the life in a flash of raw creation. But the tear did not kill. Instead, the wild magic surged, mixing instantly with the scholar's yearning energy and the fatal chill of the vine. The tear became a blinding silver liquid that ran into the wound, and the shadow vine recoiled, hissing into ash and mist. Elias gasped, the pain replaced by a tingling, impossibly vivid sensation, the feeling of seeing the world in 1,000 new dimensions. Lysandra stared at the result, horrified. Her tear hadn't killed him, nor had it fully healed him. It had imbued him. The forbidden magic had found a vessel, a conduit in the mortal man, creating an instantaneous, agonizing bond that snapped between their souls. When Elias looked at her, he no longer saw only a beautiful Fae, but the intricate lattice of magic that made up her every breath and intention. He could see the raw power coiled in her hands, the sorrow layered in her eyes, and the desperate fear that now radiated from her core. What did you do? Elias whispered, struggling to stand, his ankle throbbing with a wild alien energy. I committed treason, Lysandra replied, her voice flat with doom. I have shared forbidden magic. You're no longer fully mortal. A sharp, icy wind suddenly sliced through the verge, the sign that the High Council of the Phi had sensed the catastrophic breach in the Veil's law. They had to move. Lysandra grabbed Elias's hand, the contact sparking a shower of faint violet light, the physical manifestation of their new, terrifying bond. They fled deeper into Ethel, finding temporary sanctuary in a forgotten grotto beneath a shimmering cascade of light water. Elias's recovery was strange. The tear had accelerated his healing, but it had also unlocked a destructive potential within him. Whenever he felt strong emotion, the air around him crackled with silver firelight, tearing at the edges of reality. Lysandra spent the next few days desperately trying to understand the magic of the tear, studying the subtle changes in his mortal form. Their physical proximity was the only thing that kept the surging power in Elias stable. Their bond acted like a circuit, channeling his excess energy into Lysandra. It was in that grotto, surrounded by forbidden light and the scent of moss and danger, that the quick spark ignited into an uncontrollable fire. Their connection, forged in pain and magic, deepened rapidly, fueled by the knowledge that every shared moment was a transgression punishable by death. Elias learned of her burden, of the crushing loneliness that came with carrying a magic that could destroy those she cared for. Lysandra saw past the scholar's ambition and found a gentle, passionate man whose reverence for the magic was sincere, not greedy. One evening, Elias reached out and gently traced the line of her cheek, and the resulting flow of energy caused the grotto's walls to pulse with soft golden light. This power, Elias murmured, his eyes blazing with the borrowed Phi magic. It's not meant to be contained. It's meant to be shared. Lysandra knew this sentiment was the ultimate heresy to the Phi Council, but she could not deny the truth ringing in his voice. Meanwhile, in the grand crystal halls of the Phi Council, the enforcer, Lord Valen, was given his command. Track the breach and exterminate the mortal. Lord Valen was a being of cold, unyielding law, and the idea of a single Phi tear being wasted on a human filled him with aristocratic disgust. Using the faint, destructive echoes of the healing magic, Valen tracked them relentlessly through the enchanted woods, his steps silent and deadly. The tension between Lysandra and Elias mounted. Every shared touch risked revealing their location, but every moment apart risked Elias losing control of the tear's power. One morning, as Elias was attempting to decipher the stone tablet he'd retrieved, a shadow fell over the grotto entrance. Lord Valen stood there, encased in armor that looked like solidified moonlight, his sword the Oath Slayer hissing with anticipation. Lysandra, keeper of the veil, Valen's voice was like ice cracking. You have broken the first law. The mortal must be purged. Lysandra stepped in front of Elias, her hands raised, no longer pleading but resolute. The bond is forged, Valen. He is not just a mortal. He is an abomination, a vessel of stolen power, Valen sneered, drawing his blade. Step aside or I will cleanse your shame along with his life. Elias, though terrified, felt the forbidden magic surge through him, screaming in defense of the Phi who had risked everything for him. Valen struck first, his Oath Slayer aiming for Elias's heart, hoping to sever the magical circuit before Lysandra could react. Lysandra acted instantly, not with her own magic, but by placing her hands on Elias's chest, channeling the unstable, raw power of the tear back to its source. The moment their magic merged in that desperate, singular act, a shockwave of silver and violet energy erupted from Elias. The fusion of the Phi tear's power in Elias's mortal spirit was far more volatile than Lysandra had ever imagined. Elias roared, not in pain, but in the sudden, blinding realization of infinite possibility. He saw the threads of magic that composed Valen's armor. He didn't wield a sword. He wielded the energy of the tear, using the language of the veil he had just uncovered to shape its power. Lysandra pushed all her emotion, her deep-seated fear, and sudden blazing love into the bond, providing the pure, untainted Phi fuel. Valen, the master of cold law, was suddenly facing a magic that was fueled by chaos and human passion of power. he had never encountered. Elias, guided by Lyssandra's will, twisted the silver energy, wrapping it around the Oathslayer, forcing Valen to drop the blade as it burned his thigh skin. Valen, enraged, summoned the full power of the Council's law, tending to freeze them both in a stasis of pure, agonizing order. "You cannot defeat law with feeling," Valen screamed, his eyes glowing with the chilling blue of rigid obedience. "Perhaps not," Lysandra countered, her own eyes now blazing gold, reflecting the tier's internal power. "But we can break the law with destiny." With a final shared effort, they unleashed the totality of the tier's power, a single massive burst of creation energy that overloaded the veil itself. The light swallowed Valen, not destroying him, but forcing him backward. Tearing his connection to the Council's power structure, the Enforcer vanished, defeated not by force, but by the sheer, unbridled vitality of a true fated encounter. When the light faded, the grotto was silent, but the veil between worlds was no longer a silver mist. It was a shimmering, permanent scar. Elias and Lysandra stood together, exhausted. The power of the tier had settled, no longer volatile, but permanently woven into Ilias's core. Elias was changed forever. His eyes now held the distant, reflective light of Ethel, and his heart beat in rhythm with Lysandra's own strange existence. He was the first half-Phi, a mortal who carried the unconstrained power of creation, all thanks to a single Phi tier of forbidden emotion. They had won the battle but lost their home. Neither Ethel nor Viridia could accept a bonded pair of a keeper and a fine-fused mortal. Lysandra looked at Elias, her heart finally free of the burden of solitude, and she smiled a genuine warm expression that finally shed the coldness of her duty. Elias, now acutely aware of the mortal world's fragility and the Phi world's sharp, deadly beauty, knew he would follow her anywhere. They were fugitives now, bound by a forbidden magic, destined to wander the hidden corners where the veil was still thin and negotiable. The stone tablet, forgotten on the grotto floor, suddenly spoke to Elias. Now that he possessed the true language of the veil, it spoke not of ancient knowledge, but of two souls, destined to meet when the veil was weakest, so their union could finally heal the rift between realms. The moral was clear: the deepest, most necessary magic often requires the greatest transgression against the established order. Lysandra had sacrificed her safety and her law for a single mortal life, and in doing so, had found her true purpose. Elias had chased a footnote in a dusty book and ended up a vessel for the sun and the moon, forever tied to the beautiful keeper. Their love was the forbidden magical wild, untamed force that could either save or shatter the very foundations of their existence. They walked out of the grotto, hand in hand, their footsteps leaving faint, glowing traces in the Phi soil, ready to face their eternal, shared destiny. The world they knew was gone, but the world they would build together was one where magic and mortality finally met. The terror of the High Council remained, but Lysandra was no longer alone to face it. Elias's human passion would temper Lysandra's cold Phi power, making their combined magic something truly unstoppable. The tier had sealed their fate, an unbreakable bond of flesh and light. Every time Elias looked at Lysandra, he saw the spark that shouldn't have been touched, and knew he would risk everything to keep that light safe. Their adventure, their eternal flight, had just begun. They disappeared into the depths of Ethel, two figures shimmering with the light of a forbidden, fated love. Thank you for watching this tale of a single Phi tear from Storycraft Studio. If Lysandra and Elias's forbidden love story resonated with you, please like this video, share it with your fellow Romantasy fans, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio channel for more stories.